everyone, and welcome to what I have to say between you and me is going to be one awesome episode of Sphere of Success podcast. Because you know what, I've hit upon a gem of a guest. He is a world-renowned author. He's a public speaker. He's been on Fox News, CBS. He is out there. He has generated, listen to this. He has generated himself and in support of his clients over 20 million pounds in sales revenue. Wouldn't you like some of that? That sounds ideal to me. That would be all right. I know what I'll spend that on. It would be brilliant. He is in command of his business. He is a accredited performance coach. He is a hypnotherapist as well, and he puts that all into amazing use with his clients. He's also the most amazing published author as well. So there's not much that this gentleman can't help. If you are a small business or a corporate and you are looking to increase your performance and grow your business, listen. Keep listening right to the end because Navin Jaitly is a gentleman that I have to say I set my store out by. He does what he says on the tin. He's a lived experience kind of person. So it is absolutely wonderful, Navin, to have you on Sphere of Success podcast.
Yeah, wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me, Deborah, and thanks for that lovely introduction as well. It doesn't matter how many times I hear introductions like that. I think it's maybe the Britishness in me that always gets a little bit shy or a little bit, okay, is that me? But yeah, thank you.
Oh, well, it certainly is from what, and just let everybody know who's listening and who's watching, and thank you for doing so, is that Navin and I met previously. I was so impressed with what he was doing that I thought, yeah, he's got to be a guest on the show. So it's a real privilege to have you.
Like I said, privileged to be here. Looking forward to this.
Lovely. So I'm going to dive in. Absolutely. What is, as this is Sphere of Success and we're challenging adversity, framing that into positivity, what is it that you're hearing from small business and corporates about sales, about revenue in what I have to say is an ever-changing and right now quite a difficult and challenging business climate?
Yeah, look, I mean, it is, and it's very, very challenging, and that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing the same thing, but maybe the way it's coming out is a little bit different. So what I mean by that, when I speak to small business owners, it's very simple that they are not getting enough leads or not getting enough conversions, and sometimes both. And ultimately, they're not making enough revenue, right? And people go into business for different reasons, but definitely, making a profit is very important. And some business owners are in there for more of the altruistic side or more of the side where they just want to help people, but they're not helping people because they're not making enough revenue to fund their businesses. And of course, often the nature of their service is the more clients they get, the more they can help. So they are frustrated by that. A lot of people are frustrated. A lot of people are worried, and a lot of people aren't. They're getting into business and they're not thriving, and they're not loving running their business because they're constantly not getting enough sales in. And that's their problem. For the corporates, it's the same thing, but it's more the leaders I speak to are saying that we cannot get our sales teams to basically perform what they need to. We're not hitting our targets. Their targets are always getting more and more higher, but they're not always getting those results. It's usually what they say, like 10 or 15. I mean, it's a bit Pareto law, actually. 20% of the team are covering 80% of the results. They say you can't find the right people. They're having to keep hiring and firing, or the best people want to leave and just go for a better package somewhere. So there's a lot of frustration, a lot of worry, a lot of concern out there because people aren't performing. People aren't getting the results that they need or want. And that's what I'm hearing a lot. I'm hearing that increasingly as the market gets tougher, right? And especially in certain regions and countries in the world. But out there's so much competition, and I feel that the digital age has been brilliant because it's given everyone a lot more opportunities, but it's also given a lot more competition out there. And as a result, you have to be on your game more. And I'm finding that that's why a lot of people are coming to me and people like me, but that's the main frustration is that they are finding.
And would you say this is in one particular or a couple of sectors, or would you say this is across the board?
It's across the board. There is no sector that I've heard that they go, no, it's all swimming fine. So it doesn't matter what sector. I mean, some sectors are suffering more than others, but generally it's across the board.
So
Because think
what do
about
you,
it, the ones, so
yeah.
sorry,
No,
think
you
about
go
the
ahead.
ones that aren't doing that well, well, people are not, the competition will be a little bit less because people are either exiting it, and the ones that are doing very well, the competition's more. So either way you look at it, you're going to be struggling, right? So I don't find it sector specific at all.
Okay. So with that, then there seems to be this general downer on, and if it's the 80/20 rule and you're carrying 80% of your people, I mean, that's a lot, isn't it? That's a lot of weight on a business's shoulders to pay. So let's think about the corporate side and then we'll go into the small business side. How can you help elevate that 80% of the people to be able to lift them up to become collectively, or at least get another 80%, 20% out of those 80%? How do you go in first off and help a company to do that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, there's a few things that I can give you a couple of more stats actually. That like 48%. I'm talking about now business development people. So these are people who are hired in a business development or sales jobs. 48% of them don't hit their targets. So what you're effectively saying is that every two people you're hiring, one is not going to do well, and you're probably going to have to get rid of them, or they're going to quit, or you're going to have to sack them, right? That's obviously not good. Now, also added to that, we're talking about the 80/20 rule. Even the ones who are hitting the target, most of them are just about. And again, it's those 20% carrying the team. So there is a problem there, right? And I don't think it's just sales. I think it's across all different types of job roles. But sales is more obvious because you've got a target there, right?
Yeah.
You can see it. It's more black and white. There's no hiding behind it. Now, how I help is if you think about something else, and I always say this to people, Deborah, what would you say in any organization is the number one resource?
People.
People, right? I think everybody's in agreement that people are always going to be your number one resource. Now, don't get me wrong, technology is really, really important now, right? And I definitely believe that you need to invest in technology, but ultimately, behind technology is people. And in some ways, because technology, I would say, is the great leveler in society, like everybody can access the same technology, okay, depending on your budget, but you can access it. Whereas people are good people are actually a rare commodity. So if you think of it even as a logical sense, if you have a rare commodity, then you might as well invest in that to get the best out of it. And if people are your biggest resource and everybody in agreement, I've never met any business person who says, no, 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 it doesn't matter about people. Whether it comes from a small business entrepreneur to a large corporate, they all say that. So it just makes common sense that you invest as much as you can in those people and churn around that 80/20 figure. So how I help is literally with that because I go in and provide those coaching and training services to help those teams. Another thing on this, 80% of success, there is actually a report on this that I share with clients. 80% of success comes down to mindset. And mindset means a lot of things, right? It's about your decision making, your emotional mastery. It's about the way you think, growth mindset versus fixed mindset, confidence levels, what we would call mindset or inner game, right? And virtually again, every business leader I speak to agrees with that, right? So I mean, you could argue that why isn't 80% of your training and coaching going on mindset? Okay, or at least a good proportion. So I speak to a lot of businesses and they agree with that. Like most of them don't spend a single penny on developing their staff's inner game and mindset. Secondly, the number one, you don't sell, you don't have a business. However you want to look at it, sales is the lifeblood of business. So I always say, if you run a business, whatever size you are, there are two things you have to invest in. One is sales and selling skills and communication. It's all under one bracket. And then the other is mindset and inner game. Like it just makes logical sense that if your biggest resources in people, why not equip them with the two biggest skills that are going to help them to do their job well and bring in revenue, bring in income for your organization? So that's what I do. I go in, train and coach, but I do it in those areas. Communication, which helps not just with business development and sales with clients, but your internal communication, which is really important. Your internal clients, and especially in a bigger organization. Definitely the business development skills and sales skills, because that's going to help you to actually win clients and bring in revenue. And then I also, and I think this what probably differentiates me to a lot of out there, I'm not saying all, but a lot out there, is I really work on the inner game of mindset because I understand how important it is. Because again, Deborah, I could give you all the skill in the world and give you things to say and processes and systems, which are very important. That's in a lot of what we do. But if your mindset is in alignment to that, if you're not in your full power, if you're got a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, if you are not in your full confidence, right? All of these things, all of the skills I give you are not going to make as much difference. So I go in and I do a very holistic coaching and training where we work on the skill set and the mindset or inner game. And as a result, we actually change performance and we
And
get people loving what they're doing.
loving, passionate, getting it out there, etc. But what would you say to somebody who's an owner manager, who is a small business owner, and they are the salesperson? They've got to be. They're wearing so many different hats. And it might be something that they're thinking, I'm not getting enough sales here to keep this thing afloat. Or I'm working every hour that God sends and I'm making sales, but I just never seem to be able to get to the next level. What would you say to them? Because they can't look at their people, they are the person.
Exactly. It's a really good point you make, Deborah. So, one thing I will say to any business owner is you are a salesperson, whether you like it or not. And I know a lot of people, especially in the UK, hate that word, sales, because I think that there's a lot of negative connotation unnecessarily. Because if you really understood a big piece of what I say, sales is actually serving. And if you really understood what selling is, it's not this slimy thing. But nevertheless, if you run a business, you are a salesperson as well, because otherwise you won't have a business. So one thing I would say to them is go and learn how to sell. And it is a skill in itself, just like playing the violin is a skill. Right? You don't just rock up and say I can play the violin. You play it very badly. You have to learn how to play it. And I think a lot of people they mistake with having being able to have a great conversation means they can sell very well. Because again, I sometimes speak to people, they go, "Oh, we know how to sell. I can talk to anyone." And I'm like, it just means it means you're probably good at communication to a certain degree. It means you might be good at building relationships, which is all going to help you, no question of a doubt. Does not mean you're good at selling,
Yeah.
right? And I think what I would say is go and invest in learning how to sell and also get very confident and also comfortable with selling and don't see it as this big dirty word. Because when you actually realize what it is, you're actually like, this isn't bad at all. In fact, I'm helping people. So I would say go and learn and change your mindset around it. And if you can't do it on your own, get external help. Because I think if you look at anything in life, if you look at all the high performing athletes, they all have to help. In fact, the sort of better they are, it seems like the more they invest in their personal development, right? And it will go hand in hand. And then if you are getting to a stage where you are doing quite well, right, and you are making sales, then start hiring a team to take it off you because you're not going to be able to do it all. And I always say, if you are going to get a team, be very competent and comfortable and confident in doing sales yourself, so that you can train people you bring in, you can support them, you actually know if they're any good or not, right? Rather than playing around in the dark. So that's my advice to a small business owner, small entrepreneur. Like, just get however it is, whatever it takes, get very good, very competent, very confident, and very comfortable selling.
And Navin, tell us, have you always been this incredible salesperson that literally smashes all his targets?
The answer is no. So the answer is when I started my career, I finished university. I kind of did a graduate role at Barclays. I did a couple of things, and then I wasn't really enjoying that. And a lot of people were saying to me, Navin, you'll be good at selling, and they could because you're really social. You've got great energy. And I thought, yeah, actually, I think I will be. And like especially B2B selling, right? It is a different kettle of fish, business to business selling. And I started in a company, and I struggled the first couple of years, like a lot of people will, right? But I struggled, and I was no way some sort of a salesperson at all. And the game changer for me was that when I decided myself, because I was going to quit. I was just going to quit sales and thought, let me do a different career. And I just thought to myself, if I quit this, then I'm always going to, anytime anything comes difficult, I might just think about quitting. I said, no, do something about it. And I had started to get into personal development at that time, like reading books and, motivational books and things like that. which comes to another point where I will say, like, reading books is fantastic. I'm still an avid reader, but it's not enough, right? You need more than just a book or listening to a podcast. So I decided to do something about it. And I hired a sales coach and I hired a mindset coach out of my own pocket, out of my own money. And I lucked out because they were both very good. And in a short period, I went from someone who was struggling to someone who was doing very well, and eventually built my career further and further. And eventually I became a top salesperson, always in the top few percent in the companies I work with, did really well, just kept getting stronger and stronger and better and better. And that's why a few years ago I started my business, because I thought, well, I've become really good at this. I can teach other people. And also I understand the value of coaching because I've experienced it firsthand. And that's when I also went and I did a performance coaching qualification. I did things like hypnotherapy. I've done lots of other little bits and pieces as well, like NLP, because I understand it's not just about learning selling skills. It's like what I said earlier. It's about having that performance mindset. How could I put that all together? And then that's what I do with my business now. But in answer to your question, no, I wasn't, which also goes back to another point when people say, you've either got it or you haven't. He or she is the gift of the gab. No, like there are some natural things people have that help them. But again, like any growth mindset thinking, anything, and I mean anything, can be learned and developed if you're willing to take the time and effort to do it. So, yes, that no, I wasn't from the beginning, but I have for a long time, thankfully.
So you say that you lucked out and you got two good people to help you with your mindset and then the sales side of things as well, the coaching side. What should people be looking out for that makes a good performance coach, that makes a good sales trainer so that they don't waste their money?
Yeah, really good question, actually. So there's a few things. So one thing, there's the kind of like the obvious things, like look at their track record, what have they actually done, what kind of. I wouldn't say that they necessarily have to have worked with. Some people get very caught up with have they worked with a similar business as ours, right? I don't think that's that necessary, because I think as long as they can demonstrate a track record of success, it doesn't really matter if they have worked with exactly the same sort of client that you are, right? Because it's actually about those transferable skills. And actually, sometimes by working with somebody who works across different industries, they can actually give you some advice about things that are working in another industry. So, but definitely you want a track record of success in what they do. So, for example, if it's a sales coach, you want to make sure they were a very good salesperson, but equally so, are they good at coaching and training people? Because that's a different skill. I remember from my corporate days, some amazing salespeople became managers, and they were rubbish managers because they didn't know how to coach or train. They just were very good at selling themselves, right? So you want to make sure that when you're selecting someone, that they've either you can get some sort of evidence of their track record in coaching and training, and the best way to do that is the results they got their clients, okay? And then if of course it really helps when they've had a background in something high performing like sales, and if it is sales, then sales itself. So you want to do that. Yes, they have to be passionate as well. Of course, you want them to be passionate because that means they're always growing and learning. They're going to bring a lot of enthusiasm. They're going to want to go that extra mile to help you. So you want to go with people who are very interested in your success, right? For them, like whether it's because your success is going to mean it's a better win for their business, which is fine, right? Or if it just means because they just love helping people and that that they will love seeing you grow. It's very important that you have that genuine person who wants you to do well and isn't just trying to pick up a paycheck. And also, one thing I always ask if I go to any coach, because I still have a coach to this day. Obviously, since those first coaches, it's evolved, and the coach I use now is amazing, and he works with billionaires and government leaders and all sorts, right? But you want to check if someone's a coach or trainer, are they using a coach or trainer? Because if they're not, to a certain degree, it kind of is a bit, they're kind of hypocritical. It kind of means they don't really believe in what they're actually doing themselves, right? Now, every level is a new devil. So, even though I'm very successful, I can do a lot of things very well. I'm humble enough to know I don't know the answers to everything. When I'm trying to go to a new level, I'll have a block or something I need to bounce ideas off. So I'll go to my coach. So one thing I always ask this question, right? Whenever I have, asking a coach or trainer, I'd say, are you using a coach or trainer? And if they say no, I'd like to know why. And if they say yes, fantastic. I don't need to know all the details about their coach and trainer. I'm not going to go and ask their coach and trainer or anything, but I just want to know if they've got one. So there are a few things to look out for. And then finally, just if you gel, that definitely helps as well. And actually, this is something else. I always want to have a coach or trainer who's going to kick my ass a bit, right? I don't want someone who's just going to tell me I'm wonderful all the time. And I would say that if you're going to go with a coach or trainer, I would try to ascertain, definitely ask them, and maybe even try to pick up, are they going to be honest and strong enough to challenge you and sometimes, hold a mirror really close to your face, or are they just going to be Mr. or Mrs. Yes Man? Because that's not doing anyone good. So they're the things I look out for.
Brilliant. And then when you're thinking about you saying, that people should have coaches, and I agree with you, etc., that we should always be looking to the person that we can look up to from that point of view to tell us how they got there. I think that's really important. And also, as you say, to have a mirror because we've got blind spots that we can't see ourselves, and there's that whole piece. Nothing like doing it as others see you because we don't see that ourselves, which is great, But one of the things that I always think of is what would you say to somebody because budgets are tight? What would you say as an investment potentially with your revenue, whether you're a small business or you're a corporate, how much percentage of your annual revenue should you be devoting to topics like this so that you know that you've got your pot set aside or you're putting your money in that pot every month so that you can invest in something that's going to help you grow your revenue rather than thinking, I want to do it on the cheap or I don't know what good looks like as far as an investment is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a good question. It's a difficult question to ask in terms of exact percentages. I think that depends a lot on the business and the person involved. I would definitely say that you want to be investing though, because what I always say is, what's the cost of not investing?
Mm.
When people say, "Oh, that's a bit expensive," or something like this, I haven't got the money to, I can't afford it, or whatever. I would say you can't afford not to do it. Because the interesting thing, Deborah, is always the people who I found who are kind of either most hesitant or don't take action, right? Because they claim or they say they haven't got they can't afford it. They always seem to never be able to afford it, and there's something there. The reason they can't afford it is
If
because they're
they're
not
not
growing the
doing it.
business. Yeah.
Yeah, I get
It's
you.
like you're going to keep living Groundhog Day if you're not doing something about it, right? I actually, it's funny enough because just the last week I met someone at a networking event and I asked them, how's it going? And I met them 6 months before. And I'd suggested work with me based on what they'd been talking to us about. And they said at the time, yeah, look, we're going to try doing it ourselves and everything. And I was like, okay, fine. And I just happened to bump into them at a networking event again. I said, how's it going with that? And all I could hear was a bunch of excuses. Basically, what they hadn't done, they hadn't grown it one bit. And I didn't say anything. I went, okay, well, keep good luck. But I was thinking, like, if they had just gone and done something about it, like used someone like me, or it doesn't have to be me, even a competitor of mine, or done something about it, they probably wouldn't be in that situation. So I would definitely say take a proportion. I mean, I would say, this is a little bit going up to you personally, but at least 10%, I would say, of your revenue should be going to what I would say coaching or training, right? Because I'm not talking about, look, there's a difference between getting systems and investing in systems and processes to help with your something like your sales. That's something different. Or hiring people to help you. That's also very needed, especially when you're scaling. But I think your own development is really important because if you're a business owner, you're the most important and will always be the most important person in the business. When people like Warren Buffett say this, right? I think he said his greatest ever investment was a communication course he did. I think it was with Dale Carnegie. I can't remember exactly who, when he was a really young man. He goes, that was my single greatest investment that's made me all these billions, right? So investing in yourself, whether it's sales, whether it's mindset, whether it's personal development, whether it's communication, negotiation, whatever it is, I think as a business owner, especially, you need to do that. And if you're in any job role and you are looking to be a high functioning performer, let's take something like sales or leadership, again, every pound you're investing in yourself is going to give you a 5x, 10x, whatever X return. It'll be compounded over the years as well in the future. So I feel that sometimes people are very short sighted. And look, don't get me wrong, sometimes people genuinely can't afford something, right? I'm not talking about they've got nothing in their bank, they've got nothing to give, and they're heavily in debt. It's a different situation there. But I think at least have a plan and go, okay, I'm going to put something aside every month in my business or in my salary to then get a coach, a trainer, something to develop my skills so I'm not in these situations again. So just like we are encouraged when we're kids to save money for a rainy day or for a house or something like that, right? I really believe you should have a fund, right? That's towards your training and coaching and personal development, whether that's as an individual or with your company, a fund. And corporates as well. I mean, no corporates spend on this, but I think they don't spend enough. I mean, if we've just spoken about human capital is your most important
Yeah.
resource, why are you not spending? I don't think I can't remember the figures, but I think it was something like 2 to 3% corporate spend on the entire training budget.
Mm.
I think they should just be spending 2 to 3% just on their sales training budget, right? But I think they should be spending at least 10% on their overall training budget because that will help them to get more out of their employees, hit their goals, grow. And actually, when you invest in your staff, they don't want to leave and they don't become so mercenary because they're getting more benefits than just the salary. So it's on so many levels. It just makes sense.
And what I'd like to delve deeper into here, because the reticence from what you're saying to me is, as I see it, people think, well, you don't want to throw good money after bad, which is why I wanted to go into that conversation with you, which you've done very, very well of explaining what people should look out for in a good coach, in a good trainer, across the board. Do they have coach, etc.? What can they do? But the other thing is results. So, in your business, and as you say, sales is a very visible, tangible mechanism to see is it what you do working? What kind of results do people get from you? And as a second part from that, in what time frame do they see those results happening?
Really good question again. So with me, because a lot of what I do is business development, sales, coaching, and training, it's a lot of it is a tangible result you can actually measure, right? So what results they get is whether I'm working with a corporate or whether I'm working with an individual solopreneur or small business, is they increase their sales revenue, right? Now it does depend. I'm not saying this is everyone, it does vary, but on average, if they over a 12-month period, and I'm talking about I'm mixing corporates and small business everything together, they get a 300% increase in revenue, right?
Say
I'm
that
not talking
again.
a 300% increase in revenue.
Listen, everybody, 300% on average. So,
Yeah.
okay, it could go down slightly, but it also can increase from that as well.
Yeah, it can. And of course, a smaller business will get more of an exponential return, right? So they might get a 700% return on the revenue, right? Because they're really small where they started off with, right? Another company, we're a bigger, a much more multi-million pound company, they might get a 20% return. But I'm taking an average here, right? And so it's more sales, right? But also within that, and one thing I always do is I get very clear in where is the gap? Because some businesses are very good at getting leads in and generating conversations, but their conversion ratio is very low. So if we discover that's the problem, we will spend more of our time on working on their conversion rate skills and mindset and everything around that. Some businesses are actually very good at converting, they just can't open up opportunities. Once they get in conversations and they can actually build a business case and convert, right? But then we work on well, how can you get more of those opportunities? Usually it's usually in between. It's usually a bit of both. And so it's like, okay, after work with us, well, how many more conversations are you having? How many more leads are you getting? And then how many more converting? I actually think conversions and revenue are the more important metric because if you're, I could give you a million leads, but if none of them are going to, or 1% of them close, it's still worse off than if I gave you maybe 1,000 leads and all of them closed, right? So we look at that. But also, as well as the numbers, I'm very much a numbers guy, right? So I think the numbers have to make sense. But I'm also a very people person, right? I kind of pride myself on being very, very into both, right? And the people side of it, or what I say, the game side of it, is a lot of my clients, right? Whether they're working in corporates as leaders in teams or business development professionals, or I work with consulting firms where sometimes I'm actually training and coaching consultants. Like their job isn't business development, but they want to improve their skills in dealing with customers so they can build more business opportunities. They want to develop their inner game, their confidence, their clarity, their growth mindset, etc. So whoever I'm working with, or even an entrepreneur, is virtually all of them have said one thing, and sometimes they were already very good at this, but they've all said our confidence has gone sky high. We're so much more self-aware. We have so much more clarity. We have a different mindset now. We feel more positive and more optimistic. And there's no coincidence that that also contributes to the actual outcome in the results. So the results I get for people is very, very tangible, hardline figures, which I'm all about, but it's also the way that they grow as a person and ultimately feel. So yeah, they're the kind of results that we get.
And that's beautiful because the way that we show up isn't just for work, is it? So everybody benefits from the ecosystem and the social side of things that that person's in. And there's nothing like, hitting and exceeding your targets and going around thinking really positively. And this isn't for everybody. This isn't toxic confidence. This is deep-rooted self-knowing that, as an individual or an employee or as a business owner, that you've actually got what it takes to do. And that's a beautiful thing to be able to give that gift to people, Navin. I love that.
Exactly. Exactly. Can I just add something on that actually?
Yeah,
Because
of
you
course
just
you can.
triggered something in my mind actually. So a lot of nowadays, of course, because of social media, because of the internet, because of everything, right? There is a lot of noise out there, right? And one of the things that they talk a lot about, or they give a lot of people, I feel like a false expectation is, you go on this 1 day workshop or you do this 4 hour course and that's it, your life is sorted and you're going to be brilliant at whatever it is you're looking to be brilliant at. And honestly, that's just not the case. It makes a difference. It certainly helps going on a 1 day program or 1 day course or 4 hour. Of course it will improve. Of course it will, sometimes a lot. But I'm a big believer that you need to have something ongoing
Mm.
to really change. um, Read a really interesting book, written by a lot of professors from Harvard, and they were talking about high performance. And one of the things they talk about is something called dedicated practice. And they go, if you look at any kind of high performing person, they all naturally go through dedicated practice. If you look at a sports person, a golfer will spend hours just practicing their swing. You look at a boxer, they will spend hours sparring. You look at a footballer, they will spend hours practicing their free kicks or whatever it is that they need to. And sport world gets this really right. So they're obviously when you're doing business, you need to do the same. So if we take something like selling, right, you will improve through learning theory and learning models and learning concepts. 100% you will improve, but you'll exponentially improve when you actually get to regularly practice it. So one of the things that we do, whoever I work with, whether it's small businesses or corporates, one of the things we do a lot of dedicated practice. For example, role playing, because I could give you the theory and then you could go to the actual meeting and be like, oh, Navin told me to say this and I'm saying it's not working, right? Or something like that, because you haven't actually practiced it in real time. You haven't honed that skill. It's feeling false because you've just learned it, theoretically taking it in. So, one thing I would say is whatever it is in life now, I'm giving any skill you want to learn, and it might sound obvious, but I think people forget it, especially nowadays with the messaging that's all instant gratification, is you need to take the time out to practice it. And so that's why I'm a big believer in the coaching and training programs that allow you to do that. They keep getting you to hone that skill over a period of time and in a realistic environment as possible. Again, talking about examples, pilots. Why one of the reasons why, touch wood, the airline industry has got such a low, crash rate is because pilots practice in simulators for hours and hours. That's one of the reasons. I know there's lots of others as well, but so I always go like some of these other industries get it right. And I just feel like in the business world, people just think rock up and wing it. And I'm like, why, if it's working in all these other industries and it's giving you evidence that to get high performance, you need to hone your skills, practice, chisel away at your craft on a regular basis in a safe environment so that when you go out and do it real, you're going to ace it. Why don't we do that enough in the business world? And people will say, well, we haven't got time. But it's that story which where the two woodcutters were chopping down the tree and one of them buggers off every 4 or 5 hours. He buggers off, and at the end of the day he had buggered off for about 4 times. The other guy had been cutting the trees all day and he'd only cut two trees down. The guy who kept buggering off, going off, he came back and he cut down 5 trees, and he was like, you were here less than I was. How did you cut all those trees down? And he said, because I kept going away, it kept sharpening my axe.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, right? Like we can become busy fools, but take a little bit of time out to train, coach, whatever it is, practice, not just with a coach and trainer, I'm even saying in your own time, because it will actually save you time in the long run.
Do you know what? You've absolutely hit the nail on the head there, Navin, because I worked for a business that was one of the best in its class. I mean, outstanding business. and the people that were in the business development role, of which I was as well at that point, we had um, part of our KPIs was the fact that you have to have something like 50 hours over the year that you had role played, that you had evidence of role playing. And so, what we used to do at lunch hours and things like that, they didn't give us extra time for that. That was just something we had to figure out to do. Is we used to sit there, and back in the day before all this wonderful technology took hold, we'd set up the cameras in the little room that we had set aside for the role playing, and we would get into the role play. And you know what? A friend would come in and interrupt, and another person would come in and say, "Oh, you need it on the phone." They do that so that whenever there was a curved ball, you could just keep on resuming that. You were never put off. You were never put in a situation where you're on the back foot. You were never put in something where somebody was fobbing you off because you'd gone through all these scenarios over and over again. And so when you were in it for real, your muscle memory just came into being and you were just away. And that
That
meant
sounds
that
like
you could do it as a virtuoso. You weren't like when you were learning to drive the first time. You're actually in front of your client, and it became like this dance, like this symphony, like this beautiful movement with people. And it came more often than not to a successful outcome, but for everybody. And that's why I was going to go into next is concentrating on ourselves. But how would you say the best people, the best performing salespeople, what is it that they do that other people don't?
okay, really good question. It varies a little bit to person, but generally there are a few overall themes of things they do. One thing they do invest in themselves in learning, right? Whether that means hiring a trainer or a coach or just spending extra time going over calls, practicing, etc., etc. So they put the work in on themselves, especially. They prepare very well in terms of for meetings, for clients, like they're dedicated, right? Like in anything in life, you have to be dedicated. So there's definitely that. They don't wing things as much, but they have a process, a system as well. They have this nice balance between having a process and a system and a strategy to follow, and then being able to be spontaneous. But I always say the spontaneity can be very effective when you're backed up by a strong process and system. If you are only spontaneous, you are going to miss out on things, and that spontaneity is going to fall down a bit. If you're so rigid that all you can do is follow a process and system, well, you're going to be buggered when that someone throws a curveball at you. So the best salespeople and sales leaders are the ones who have they follow a process, system, and strategy, but they also have that ability to be spontaneous. And also, I think they're really good at looking at things from the customer's point of view. So, even when they send a message out to a customer, when they're speaking to a customer, whatever they're doing it from number one, they really think from the customer's point of view and be in their shoes, but also just as importantly, they articulate that. Because some people think from the customer's point of view, but when they articulate, it doesn't, they're not getting that across to the customer. So they're very good at articulating value and helping the customer to understand the benefit of doing something. And I'd say another thing is it's actually a book that was written called The Challenger Cell, written, I think it was 10, 12 years ago. And they looked at something like 50,000, don't quote me on the figure, but it was a ridiculous amount of salespeople and sales conversations and recordings they listened to, they interviewed people. And what they found, cut a long story short, is they said that the best salespeople, they broke them into different groups, the lone wolf, the relationship builder, there's 4 or 5 different groups. And they found that the person, what they call the challenger salesperson, was the best one. And what the challenger salesperson did is, yes, they could build relationships and everything like that and research and offer solutions. But what they were very good at is they were very good at tailoring their offering to each person. And that means, again, understanding the customer's needs and then tailoring what they were saying, that message to them. They were very good at teaching the customer something new because, and especially in this day of fast knowledge, we're living in the data age, you can go out and get information. People don't really need information as much as they did, say, 30 years ago. When you were selling 30 years ago, you just gave customers information that was enough. People want to be able to be taught something. So if you can take the information that's out there right? And you can present it to the customer as to what does that mean for them. Now what you're doing, you're becoming value add. So the challenger salespeople were very good at doing this. And the final good thing they were very good at is challenging the customer. So again, this a lot comes from emotional mastery. But again, just always being nice and nodding your head and agreeing is not always going to be the best thing. Sometimes a customer has to be challenged as to their thinking in a very respectful, in a very professional way. But sometimes I have to say people don't know what's best for them because they're thinking in a very, what we said earlier, they can't see their blind spots. And as a when you're selling, you've got to be able to, in a very skillful way, show them what they're not seeing and make them realize, not you telling them, but make them realize what would happen if they don't take your solution on. So the very best salespeople, they have a combination of all these things, and they will push back at the customer. A, if they need to, as in they're not trying to just pull something over the customer's eyes. It's genuinely they need to, and in an appropriate way. So there's a few things there, but they are. I found, and even the people that I've ended up buying from, I've seen that they've had that. So yeah, I'm sure I've missed one or two things, but they're the main things that come to my mind.
Well, I think you're certainly given us some wonderful education today, Navin. It's been awesome listening to you. I mean, and this is all for free. I mean, everybody, we're getting this out there on the internet so that we can help businesses of all sizes and people of all abilities to be able to create abundance in their life. I mean, and other people's lives as well. Isn't that just awesome? What a wonderful, wonderful gift to people. And
Absolutely.
Navin, you have taken pen to paper, as it were. You've typed on the keyboard. You have got the most amazing book. Tell us all about it because I think it's something that could be very interesting for people to, again, to be educated about how to get this right.
Yeah, 100%. So the book, I've got a copy here actually, is Selling from the Inside Out. Okay, it's on Amazon. And I'll tell you about this book because it is really my philosophy, right? And you can see it's got the iceberg, the old-fashioned iceberg that probably on every personal development book right at the moment. But I really do believe in that actually a lot of what is, so there's two parts, right? I call it selling from the inside out. You need to get both parts right. It goes back to the inside being the inner game, the mindset, the emotional mastery, business, the growth mindset, etc. And then the out part, which is the skill set, right? Which is all about what my coaching and training is about. It's all about those two things. And I wrote a book based on that. And again, it comes from my personal experience because I realized that when I got both those parts right, that's when I started absolutely smashing it, right? Getting just one of those parts right, you'll smash it by half, right? Get both of those parts right, and you really, really do well. So my book is about that, and I wanted to make it very practical. So it's a very short book. It's about 100, what is it, 140, 50 pages, but it's very practical. So there's a lot of like actual exercises you can use in there to develop your mindset and your skill set. Obviously, a very condensed. Um, I don't go into the detail that I would in my actual programs, but you get a good flavor. If you read this, you get a flavor for what I'm about, but you also get some actual very practical skills that you can take away and use. And it's full of examples as well. And like I said, I wanted to create a book that is a good read. It's a read that people could read on a 2 or 3 hour train journey, and then actually take the exercises and actually work on them because I want the book in itself to improve people. So yes, that's what it's about, and go and get it.
Well, I think this is wonderful. And what a wonderful gift to give to people to be able to say, even if you know somebody that's struggling or somebody that's starting out on their career or is an old timer and you think, you know what, there's some things that you could probably improve on, get Navin's book because it's like anything, isn't it? A seed of an idea. You might get a couple of ideas from that book. You probably get a lot more, but one or two, and that could really change the trajectory and exponentially grow your business and your self-worth, because when you're riding high and you know that sales isn't a problem for you anymore, it gives you that confidence and that comfort and that time to be able to develop other areas of your business so that you're not so in that field of lack, that you've got the abundance and then you can start to do other things and you can replicate it by getting other people. So,
Yeah.
Navin, this has absolutely been wonderful. I loved it. Your courses, your training, your mentoring from both small businesses right the way up to large corporates. How can people get hold of you?
Sure. So I'm very active, especially on LinkedIn. So, come and find me, join me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and it's Navin, Navin Jaitly, Jaitly. Or you can send me an email and navinjaitlycoaching@outlook.com. And yeah, I mean, they're the main two ways I would say you can get hold of me. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, usually a little bit less, but you can connect with me there. So just connect with me, send me a message. I post a lot, especially like I said on LinkedIn. Drop me an email if you want to find out more. If you want we to have a explore working with your teams, if you're in a corporate or if you're an individual business owner, look at some of the things that I provide there. And one thing I would say as well, just to end on this as well, is one of the big keys to success is also being a little bit humble. And one thing I find that when people hear the word coaching, they get a very wrong impression. And I think a lot of people confuse coaching with therapy, right? And they think that if I get a coach, it means I'm saying there's something wrong with me. I'm not very good at something and I need help, right? And it's almost like a bad thing, right? If you really think about it, and I always say, again, take the sports world, the coaches there, Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, LeBron James, all these people, they use coaches because they're already doing well and they want to get to a very high performance. So coaching is a very high performing thing to do, right? Training, same. Coaching and training, there are slight differences in that as well. So sometimes our own ego can get in our way and we don't want to admit that we're struggling with something or we're not topping when we need to be in it. And don't let that be a barrier for your success. you know so if you want to, even if you're doing quite well but you realize there are some gaps, you know I always say, and I always say to some people, if you don't want to work with me, work with someone like me, but make sure they're good. Because just having coaching and training in your organization, in your business, and in your life, it's a game changer if you get the good person. It really is. So yeah, I just want to end on that because I know that's something that goes through people's minds.
Very much so. Words of wisdom, Navin, because it's not until you realize that the elite have coaches. They might not shout about them, but they have coaches. And then you might every now and again hear of something again, they've got an advisor. I mean, let's face it, all the politicians, or like them or loathe them, they all got advisors that know more than they do in the particular areas, or that they can frame and get opinions from people, etc. And that's the other thing, opinions from people, different ways of looking at things, a different viewpoint, a different set of eyes on a problem or a circumstance can actually be the catalyst for the most incredible change, leading into all sorts of different things. So you might be doing exceedingly well and can't see a gap in what you're doing. However, if you did a slight shift, you could then not just make in 3 million, you could make 30 million, you could make 300 million. And it's those types of things which are from 30 grand to 300 grand. And wouldn't that be wonderful? It's all that we can only think of so much ourselves. And then it comes down to actually having good people around us to help with the next stages. So, whatever place you are in the whole framework of what you're doing, you could be even fresh out of college. Have a chat with Navin or a seasoned CEO. Have a chat with him because he'll be able to help absolutely transform. And if everything stayed the same, well, then fine, but it doesn't. It changes, and we need to change with it. Navin, it's been a pleasure. I've absolutely listened to every word you've said. You've given us so much value. Truly appreciate your wisdom and your sincerity and your authenticity as well, because that shines through.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you for having me because I love having these sort of conversations. I love your energy as well. You've asked some great questions, so thank you very much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So, everybody listening, I hope you've enjoyed that episode. And what I want to say is thank you. And if you're new to the channel, it's just wonderful that you come on, rock up, have a look at all the shows that we do. It's all casual, but ultimately, there's a deep rooted purpose here is to help people be abundant, to look at the challenges that we're faced with in the lens of positivity, as we're saying, growth, both for your company and for yourself, how we can take things, that silver lining in every dark cloud. And I tell you what, it transforms the way we think, it transforms our lives and the lives of people around us. So thank you, like, comment, subscribe, and share, because you never know who this might resonate with. Thank you so much, everybody. Until next
Thank you.
time, be successful. Bye.
See ya.